Yesher koach. I'm very proud of you, Marcus. I know that Passover has ended, but I want to share one last true short Pesach story with you all. It starts around a decade ago. It was Passover, and I was in Israel, and my phone began to vibrate. I looked, and there was a photo of one of my very dear friends, who today is a well-beloved, established rabbi, and he is sitting at a beachside restaurant in Tel Aviv, and he is chowing down on what certainly looked like a double bacon cheeseburger. "Why are you sending me this?" I asked him. "What is that?" And he replies, "Why, it's a delicious double bacon cheeseburger." I repeated my question. I know you don't keep kosher, but why are you sending me this?" He said, "Because of the bun. It's a kosher for Passover bun. Moadim l'simcha." Passover, perhaps unique amongst all our observances, can inspire people like my friend the rabbi, who do not even pretend to keep kosher, to take on changes to their diet, to take on strict personal observances about that they will and will not put into their bodies. Yes, he'll have that treify sandwich, but God forbid he have it on a roll during Passover. In similar vein, I know many committed vegetarians who on Passover will indulge in meat throughout the holiday, because how else am I supposed to keep Passover? And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I know many Jewish vegan activists who are having loud conversations about how to have a Passover that is both ethical and Jewish as far as their diet is concerned. It's a fascinating subject and also a timely one, because not only has our Chag just ended, but also because this is the week where, as we just heard, our Torah portion Shmini, which contains many of the base commandments which will become the laws of kashrut. And this week, those laws of kashrut bring us into a conversation about meat, about how kashrut is ever evolving, and ultimately about the promise that food holds between human beings and God. A very brief and very basic summarization of kashrut, which is to say the laws of keeping kosher. 1, there are animals which are always forbidden to eat, such as the pig. 2, there are ingredients which are forbidden to go together but are fine separately, such as milk and meat. And 3, finally, there is a method that is important by which the animal is slaughtered, and that must be followed very precisely. Rabbi Shai Held, though, amongst others, argues that amongst those 3 basic concepts, there is also an ethical element of kashrut, which is hidden away in the story of our Torah. Our Torah presents this ongoing, evolving relationship between the Creator, the creation, and all the internal relationships that the creation is obligated to have with each other in terms of food, feeding, sustenance, survival. And in the beginning, Rabbi Held argues, God gave everyone a vegetarian diet. In Genesis 1, 29 through 30, we are explicitly given the trees and the fruits that are ours for food. There's no mention of being allowed to consume animals. And similarly, back in this sense of mythological time, back in the Garden of Eden, all animals in existence, according to Held, even the ones that we today would consider to be the predatory animals, they were only ever given the green plants for food. But there's a change, and that change is the flood. After the flood, there is a new order in the universe, and God assigns and expands the definition of what is open for eating. The Torah explicitly says, "Every creature that lives shall be yours to eat," says God to Noah. Our rabbis are split on the reasoning here. Some of the Talmudists argue that the people before the flood, they were already eating meat even though they knew it was forbidden, and that this act of forbidden consumption led them to other forbidden acts, and that is why the entire generation was wiped away. By giving society a release valve, Rabbi Held argues that God stops the slow slide towards sinfulness that the generation of the flood experienced. But other commentators like the Abarvanel argue that Noah and his family were simply worried that they were going to starve. They looked around a ruined world that had only just started to dry out from a cataclysmic flood. They saw nothing to eat. There were no living plants, fruits, grains, or vegetables that they could eat that would have survived that destruction. After all, what had that little dove found? Only just the first blossoms of an olive branch. God, Abarvanel argues, is only allowing human beings to eat meat because starvation was the alternative. But even in this new world of conceited carnivorous eating, God is already wary of unrestricted consumption. Of the Noahide laws, which are 7 commandments that are obligatory to all human beings, regardless of your membership within the Jewish people, one is that you cannot eat a creature while its lifeblood is still within it, which is to say that the very first law of kashrut that comes into existence is that you're forbidden from eating something while it is still alive, or you're forbidden from chopping off a limb and eating it while keeping the animal alive, which strikes us as a piece of high-level ethics. Even from the beginning, there is a sense of concern for that which we are going to consume. Finally, Rav Held argues, quoting the Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, that if you look to the words of the prophet Isaiah, you can see God never quite gave up on this whole world of peace where nobody hurts or eats anybody anymore. After all, this very famous quote, which all of you are going to know in just this moment, does not the lion lie down with the lamb? Do not read that only as a symbol of power dynamics and peace. Understand it literally. The lamb is no longer worried that the lion is going to eat it, because in this messianic future that Isaiah describes, there's no longer need for anyone to suffer. And so, it's our obligation as Jews, says Soloveitchik, to do our small part in bringing about a world where no one is suffering. And well then, say some of his students who embrace a vegetarian diet, shouldn't you, lions, stop eating all those cute little lambs? Rabbi Held ends his analysis of the Torah by lifting up the possibility that yes, maybe universal vegetarianism isn't messianic ideal, but what is not messianic, what is achievable in this world, is that the Torah calls us to be ethical in consumption. And no matter what your Jewish mother told you, eating whatever is placed in front of you has never actually been a Jewish value. Which returns us to this week's Parsha and the laws of kashrut and their many interpretations today. In the Jewish world, there are many conversations going on about what is and is not, what should and should not be kosher. And sometimes, interestingly, these conversations are in direct parallel and in direct opposition to what is written in the Torah. Rabbi Shmuley Yankowitz, an Orthodox rabbi and justice advocate, has been practicing veganism for more than a decade. He argues that his kashrut is elevated by his veganism because he feels it allows him to practice another method for communing with his Creator. He argues that the reason why Judaism has survived for thousands of years is because we are always imbuing our rituals with added levels of meaning. And that when rituals lose meaning, that is when we are in danger and our survival is in danger. He says, today in a world where ritual observance, where religion is threatened, I believe that we need to move again and again to imbue our rituals with a sturdy sense of ethics. And for him, one such move has been to be keenly ethically observant about what he eats, while simultaneously refusing to give up on the 1,000-year-plus tradition of kashrut. Meanwhile, other religious leaders, including many rabbis and cantors in our own reform movement, believe that eco-kashrut is the honest inheritor of our ancient dietary laws. And what is eco-kashrut? Well, according to one sagely practitioner, it can mean prioritizing environmentally responsible livestock and animal products over the approval of the rabbanut, or the butcher. Or as another teacher once told me, for me, ethical kashrut means caring more about the life that the animal lived rather than the way that it died. Kashrut observance is vast and diverse in our Jewish world. Some hold kosher style, others are Mahadran kosher, and still others, like my friend who is kosher for Passover with bacon, don't believe that kashrut has really any meaning in the world at all today. I personally, as you can probably tell, disagree. But I can't fault his logic. Kashrut, like several other mitzvot in the Torah, are what we call mitzvot de'oraita, and they are classified as what we would call a chok, which is to say that the laws of kashrut make sense to exactly one being in the universe, and that is God. And the reasoning has never been revealed to human beings, so it is, despite all of our best efforts, a mystery. And yet, despite its mystery, or perhaps because of it, kashrut and its many facets has never failed to delight me as I continue to get excited about the way that our people examine and determine and discuss our relationship to food. And so I want to present two modern case studies that are so modern you might even call them science fiction, that came across my desk recently, that proves that while kashrut may be ancient, it is never, ever boring. Briefly show me if you in this room have tried one of the various brands of fake meat at this point. So, soy protein, Beyond Whoppers, Impossible Burgers, President's Choices, pithily titled Undeniable Burger. Thank you. It's an interesting number of people in the room. They come in a number of names, they come in a number of flavors, and almost all of them at this point carry a hechsher, which is to say that they are kosher. And yet, there is one which, despite the fact that it has fulfilled all of the obligations and requirements, lacks that fabled star/seal of approval. Do you want to guess what it is? Impossible pork. Yes, my friends, the plant-based pork substitute is just too much like the real thing, according to kashrut authorities, and thus it is officially not kosher, despite the fact that it is a vegan product made in a kosher factory. And the second deeply modern case of kashrut, which has just tickled me greatly, comes straight from the headlines of the future. A few months ago, Israel's chief rabbi declared that meat, which is grown in a lab from the stem cells of once living animals, can be considered kosher. Aleph Farms, which is a tech startup in Israel, has developed a lab-grown steak that smells and looks and apparently tastes just like the real thing, despite never having been alive. And in fact, explicitly because of that little fact, that it was never alive, not only is this lab-grown steak kosher, it will not even be considered meat. It will be considered parv, the gray land between meat and dairy. So despite the fact that it is identical on a cellular level to beef, the Rabbanut has declared it to be not meat, and therefore can be enjoyed sizzling in a pile of butter to your heart's content, though perhaps not health. a vegan pork that is not kosher, a lab-grown steak that is not meat, vegan kashrut, eco-kashrut. It is a wide, wild, and exciting world that comes to us directly from our Torah this week. Ultimately, though, the great claim of trying to understand kashrut, of trying to take the mystery and give it meaning and relevance, I really feel that it can be boiled down to this simple and fundamental truth, that the things that we eat should never be taken for granted. And for some, that can be found in the claim of treating animals with ethics. And for some, we will hear about mass and mindless consumption. Others will parse kashrut 1,000 ways. Some will rediscover it as an ethical act, some as a green environmental choice, and some as a tradition that must simply be guarded, defended, and held. And I would add in a spiritual element as well. That the act of eating the most basic foodstuff in existence, which is the simple bread that has for thousands of years defined a Jewish meal, was for our ancestors an act of partnership with the divine. We know this from the prayer we say and will say over this challah in just a few moments. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You who cause bread to come forth from the earth. But that's not true, is it? Bread doesn't come forth from the earth without the helping hands of human beings. To till and to sow, to seed and to reap, to thresh and to winnow and sift. God starts the journey. Human beings finish it. We are in this together, and we can't take that for granted. Having ended our Passover holiday, where each of us, at whatever level we were at, took on some level of observance and awareness of the food we eat, I would hope and I would pray that as we go further into this year, let us continue to carry that spiritual meaning forward and appreciate what our tradition gives us, no matter how it presents us in our lives, for it is a tool to give us a great appreciation for our Creator and our creation. Shabbat Shalom. Shalom. It is my pleasure to invite Marla Spiegel to offer up announcements from our Board of Directors.